Hi, folks. Today we begin with this concept called dot products and vectors. And I think we want to talk about the fact that there are some things that we've learned about that you'll be learning more about, and it has to do with this idea of closure. In other words, we know that if we do any integer, and we have the set of all the integers, that if we do addition of any two integers, our answer will fall in that same set of integers. And if we do any subtraction, 3 minus 2 will get 1, which is also in the set of integers. And so the set of integers is closed under the operations of addition and subtraction. Your answers will fall in that set of data. But if, for example, I were to choose the odd integers, and I were to do addition, would my answer fall within the set of odd integers? No, because 5 and 7 makes 12. That's not an odd integer. What about subtraction? Is the set of odd integers closed for subtraction? No, because 5 minus 3 is 2. What about multiplication? Yeah, 5 times 3 is 15, which is an odd integer. So the set of odd integers is closed for multiplication. Is it closed for division? No. So in the same way, the operations that we normally think of as everywhere, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division, as you get up into higher thinking of math, don't apply the same way. So if I take a vector and I want to add another vector, say this is v and w is this vector, can I add them together? Sure. I get v, and then I can add w to it, and I can think about it as a parallelogram, and the resultant vector is what comes across here, the sum of the vectors. And I could do the same with subtraction by basically adding the negative of this vector. And I get this smaller segment over here by doing v minus w. I can also do scalar multiplication, right? If I do 2 times v, that means I just take this vector, and instead of changing the angle is the same, but the magnitude doubles. So we can dilate effectively by multiplying, and by dividing, for instance, that's how we created the unit vector. What about if I wanted to multiply 2 vectors? And just to give you a sense, if we take a length, for instance, 3 centimeters, and another length of 5 centimeters, and we multiply these two things together, what do we get? An area, assuming these things were orthagonal or perpendicular to start with. So lengths in concept can be multiplied, and the result, the product, makes sense to us. But if I take a vector that's got direction and magnitude, and I try to multiply it by something else that has direction, but also a magnitude, what I get isn't really clear. It doesn't really give us this same idea of just a clean number. So today we're going to talk about what happens when we multiply, quote unquote, vectors. And the concept is something called the dot product. So let's start with just recognizing how we employ the dot product. Again, we've talked about vectors as being able to write them in component form, like A1, comma B1 with the chevrons, A2, comma B2. Well, if we have it in this format, the dot product, V dot W, and ideally the dot is bigger than a multiplication dot, doesn't look like a multiplication, it's slightly larger, then the operation for us here is to take the product of the x terms, A1 times A2, and add the product of the b terms. This is the implementation of calculating the dot product of 2 vectors. And this number comes out to be a scalar quantity, just a number, We'll talk in a moment about what that looks like and what it does for us. But simply, if I'm going to find the dot product of problem number 1 here, I would say P, big old dot Q, equals, and I'd take the X values and multiply them together. 5 times 1, and then I'd add the product of the Y values. And so I'd get 5 plus 18 equals 23. Easy peasy. Please do number 2 now yourselves. Calculate the dot product of R and S. Easy peasy. Any questions on that? Now let's take a moment and consider, what if I had a vector A? Oh no, I'll make it A. I'll make it X. And it had the components of A, I, plus B, J. What's the slope of this vector, assuming I've got it in standard position where it's anchored at the origin? What's the slope? B over A, good. Just like the tangent is equal to Y over X. And then what if I had another vector that had the components of BI minus AJ? What's the slope of this line, or this vector? The Y value, negative A, over the X value, B. What do you notice about these two slopes? They multiply to -1. They're negative reciprocals, which means these two vectors are perpendicular, or we're going to use this new term orthagonal, which means the same thing. And notice now, if I take the dot product of X and Y here, I'm going to get A times B plus B times negative A is AB minus AB is 0. And that's going to be consistent. If two vectors are perpendicular, then their dot product is equal to 0. Vectors with a dot product of 0 are also described as orthogonal. So take a look at number 5. Just by looking at these, you might not think of them as orthogonal or perpendicular, but we can find if they are by doing the dot product. So 3 times negative 28 plus 7 times 12. 60 and 24 is negative 84. Plus positive 84 is 0. When you do the dot product and you get a value of 0, what can we say about these two vectors? They are orthogonal. Yes, they are. And we're starting to get a handle on some of the properties that we can use with vectors. And again, like we talked about the closure, there are some operations we can do with vectors, and it's important that we identify them up front. One is that if I take two vectors that are in a dot product relationship, v dot w, the commutative property works. In other words, I can swap locations and say that w dot v is the same thing. That doesn't work for division, though, does it? Like 5 divided by 3 is not the same as 3 divided by 5. And nicely, the distributive property effectively works. If I've got v dot w plus x, then I can treat that as v dot w plus v dot x. And we've previously worked with this idea of k, some scalar quantity. And if I distribute the scalar quantity across the dot product here, again, this is taking two vectors and compiling them in such a way that we get a single numerical value. We're not going to distribute this k through both of them. That would be double counting it. So instead, you get that k times the v vector dot product w, or you could say that it's the v vector dot product kw. In other words, the k only shows up one in the relationship. And anytime you have a zero vector involved in the dot product, it overwhelms everything and makes zero. Isn't a surprise because you get 0i plus 0j, multiplying both components to zero. And what do you think happens if you do the dot product of itself? It's squared, isn't it? In other words, that's the magnitude of v as well. We've already done that. And we'll apply these dot product properties a little bit later. For now, if you go to top of page 2, you'll see that we're going to be finding the magnitude using this idea. If the dot product is equal to the magnitude of v squared, then that means we can find the magnitude of v by doing what? Yep, square root of the dot product. So if I want to find the magnitude of r, I'm going to find the square root of the dot product, which means this a value of 10 gets multiplied times itself. And this b value of 24 gets multiplied by itself. So I get the square root of 100 plus 576, which is the square root of 676, which is 26. So again, just some manipulations, some calculations. Now here's the first real application of dot products that's really helpful to us. If I've got two vectors, v and w, and there's an angle between them, I can find the angle between them by considering that this is like a triangle. And if we had a triangle that was not a right triangle, we could use the law of cosines to tie together this angle with these three dimensions. And the same is going to work here. It derives and creates this idea that the cosine of theta turns out to be the dot product of w and v divided by the product of their magnitudes. And again, like we said, if this angle here, theta, comes out to be 90 degrees, then what's true about the vectors? They're orthogonal, perpendicular. And instead, if the angle between them ends up to be 0 or 180, what can we say about the directionality of the vectors? Parallel, good. And so this is just going to be applying this formula. We want to find the cosine of theta, which means first we do the dot product of our two vectors. So that means multiplying the a's, 8 times negative 7 plus the product of the b's over, how do I find the magnitude of u? It's just Pythagorean theorem. 8 squared plus negative 7 squared. And that's going to be multiplied times the magnitude of this other one. Negative 7 squared plus negative 3 squared. 8 times negative 7 is negative 56 plus positive 21 over 8 is 64 and 49 is 113 and 49 and 9 is 58. So this is negative 35 over 113 times 58 is 6554. Crazy looking fraction, but this is all what cosine of theta is equal to. So how do we find what theta is equal to? Sure. So theta is going to be the inverse cosine of this crazy fraction, 35 over root 6554. I didn't leave myself much room there. Should your calculator be in degrees or radians at this point? Degrees, because we want to make sense of the answer that comes out rather than trying to divide it by pi. Negative 35 divided by square root of 6554. 115.62. And recently we did that whole tangent inverse where we had to pay attention to what quadrant it falls into and make adjustments. When we think about inverse cotan, what quadrants does it apply to? 1 and 2. And does that make sense that when we find the angle between two vectors, we're always going to be finding an angle between 0 and 180? Yeah. So in other words, you won't have to make the adjustments that we did with inverse tangent for these inverse cosines. Okay, let's do one for practice. Please do number 14 now. Bless you. Yeah. Please give me a thumbs up if you got a 30.96 as the angle. Questions? All right. This packet is your work for today. You may also work on the practice test if you wish to prepare for an early test based on AP testing.